The numbers that decided a life, they already knew the sentence before the judge spoke. The courtroom was silent. Not quiet, silent. The kind of silence where even breathing feels loud. A man stood in orange clothes, hands shaking behind his back. His name was Daniel Mercer, 32 years old. First arrest of his life. No weapon found. No one hurt. Yet the prosecutor leaned forward and said calmly, "Your Honor, under federal sentencing guidelines, the minimum is 25 years." Daniel blinked. 25. His lawyer's pen fell onto the table. The judge looked down at a printed chart, rows and rows of numbers, then back at Daniel. "I have no discretion," the judge said softly. And that was the moment everyone in the room realized something terrifying. The punishment had already been decided by math. But nobody yet knew the most important detail. Daniel wasn't the real target. And the person the government actually wanted was sitting behind him in the gallery, smiling. 6 months earlier, Daniel Mercer worked nights at a shipping warehouse outside Cleveland. It was a boring place. Metal shelves, loud forklifts, coffee that tasted like burned water, boxes that never ended. Daniel liked boring. After leaving the army, he wanted normal life. Small apartment. His dog, Milo. Weekend basketball with coworkers. Nothing dramatic. His supervisor always said, "Mercer, you're the most reliable guy here." Daniel smiled every time. Reliable meant safe. Until a new worker arrived. His name was Victor Hale. Victor was friendly. Too friendly. He talked fast, laughed loud, and somehow knew everyone within 2 days. He remembered birthdays, favorite sports teams, even the vending machine snacks people bought. "People trust the guy who listens," he once told Daniel during break. Daniel shrugged. "I just want to finish my shift." Victor leaned closer. "You ever notice the sealed crates in Dock 4? Daniel looked up. "We're not supposed to ask questions." Victor grinned. "Exactly. That was the first moment something felt wrong. But wrong didn't feel dangerous. Not yet." 2 weeks passed. Victor started asking small favors. "Hey man, can you swap shifts Friday? Can you scan this pallet for me? My scanner's dead. Can you sign this delivery log?" Supervisor already approved. Each request felt harmless. Tiny. Work stuff. Daniel helped because Daniel always helped. Reliable people help. One night, Victor bought pizza for everyone. Pepperoni, extra cheese. Even got Daniel's favorite soda. "You're good people," Victor said. "I owe you." Daniel laughed. "You don't owe me anything." Victor's smile stayed longer than normal. "You'd be surprised." The warehouse had cameras everywhere. Except Dock 4. Everyone knew it. No one talked about it. Dock 4 was for overnight federal shipments. The company never explained more. Workers only moved the crates where labels told them. No opening. No scanning contents. Just signatures. One rainy Thursday at 2:13 a.m., Victor approached Daniel holding a clipboard. "Quick thing," Victor said. "Supervisor wants Dock 4 cleared early. Truck arriving before sunrise." Daniel wiped his hands. "Okay. Just sign these releases and move the pallets to outbound lane." Daniel looked at the forms. Long serial numbers. Government seals. He hesitated. Usually supervisor signs. Victor tapped the paper. "He's busy upstairs with inspection." Already approved. Daniel stared at the blank signature line. Nothing looked strange. Nothing felt dangerous. So he signed. That was the moment the clock started. 4 days later, federal agents arrived. Not local police. Not company security. Black jackets. Gold letters. FEDERAL. The warehouse shut down instantly. Workers stood in groups whispering. Daniel kept thinking, did someone steal equipment? Then an agent walked straight toward him. "Daniel Mercer?" "Yes." "Hands where we can see them." The room tilted. "What? What?" Another agent placed cuffs on him. "You are under arrest for distribution of controlled substances and conspiracy under federal statute." Daniel stared in confusion. "There's a mistake." The agent replied calmly. "You signed the release." They showed him a photo. Doc forked the crate he moved. Inside, tightly packed packages of fentanyl, enough to supply several states. Daniel's legs almost collapsed. "I didn't know," he whispered. But federal law didn't care what he knew, only what he signed. The interrogation room was cold. A recorder clicked on. "Mr. Mercer," the agent said, "federal sentencing guidelines depend on weight and distribution level. This quantity carries a mandatory minimum of 25 years. Daniel shook his head over and over. "I just work there. I move boxes." "Who told you to sign?" "Victor, coworker." He said supervisor approved. The agents looked at each other. "Describe Victor." Daniel did. The agents wrote nothing down. One finally asked, "Did he ever give you money?" "No." "Did he ever ask you to avoid cameras?" "No." The questioning lasted 6 hours. Daniel kept repeating the same truth. "I didn't know." But the law wasn't asking about knowledge anymore. It was building a conspiracy. In federal cases, numbers matter more than stories. Weight of substance, number of packages, role in distribution chain. The chart, the sentencing table, converts actions into years. And Daniel's signature placed him high on that chart. Distributor, organizer, transport facilitator. He wasn't any of those things. But the paper said he was. His lawyer, Maria Alvarez, finally met him 2 days later. She placed a thick binder on the table. "Daniel, this is serious. I didn't do it. I believe you. Then I go home, right?" Maria hesitated. "No." Daniel felt colder than the cell. Federal prosecutors don't need to prove you knew the drugs were there. They prove you participated in moving them. "I moved a box. You signed release authorization. That legally connects you to distribution." Daniel stared at her. "So what happens?" She opened the sentencing chart. Numbers filled the page like a maze. Best case, if you cooperate, maybe 12 to 15 years. Daniel's mouth went dry. Worst case. Maria looked at him with honesty. Life. The world shrank to the sound of a humming light. "Find Victor," Daniel whispered. "He did this." Maria closed the binder slowly. "Daniel, there is no employee named Victor Hale in company records." They checked security footage. Victor appeared clearly on camera every day. Badge, uniform, laughing with workers. But the badge number belonged to a retired employee in another state. His ID was fake. His paperwork fake. His existence fake. The only real thing was the signature Daniel wrote. And in federal court, paper beats memory. 3 months later, Daniel finally saw the evidence. Phone records, truck routes, financial trails. They didn't lead to him. They led to a massive trafficking network, one investigators had been chasing for years. Suddenly, his case made perfect, horrifying sense. He wasn't arrested because he was guilty. He was arrested because he was useful. His lawyer, Maria, spoke quietly. "They want you to testify." "Against who?" She slid a photograph across the table. Daniel's hands trembled as he looked at it. It was Victor, but not the Victor he knew. The haircut was different. He was wearing an expensive suit, and he looked older, harder. Maria explained. "His real name is Anthony Varga. He's been a federal target for 5 years. They could never get inside his operation until your signature connected him directly to that shipment." Daniel felt sick to his stomach. "So they know I didn't do it." "They know," she confirmed, "that you're the only witness who can place him at the warehouse on that day. And if I refuse to testify?" Maria didn't answer right away. She didn't need to. The image of the sentencing chart flashed in Daniel's mind. The numbers. The 25 years. The night before he was due in court, Daniel couldn't sleep. He just lay there, replaying every single moment in his head. The pizza, the clipboard, Victor's friendly smile. Reliable people help. That was his mistake. Trusting that smile. At 2:47 a.m., the heavy footsteps of a guard stopped at his cell. "You have a visitor." Daniel frowned, confused. "My lawyer." The guard just shook his head. No name listed. In the sterile visitation room, a man sat waiting behind the thick glass partition. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't family. Daniel slowly picked up the receiver, his hand shaking. The man smiled, a gentle, almost apologetic smile. "I'm sorry about all this, Daniel." Daniel's heart stopped cold. It was Victor. "No. Anthony Varga. How are you here?" Daniel whispered into the phone, his voice barely audible. Varga's voice was impossibly calm. "You signed the paper, Daniel." "Not me. You ruined my life." Varga leaned closer to the glass, his eyes holding Daniel's. "No, the sentencing guidelines did." Daniel gripped the phone so hard his knuckles turned white. "They're going to arrest you tomorrow." Varga's smile widened. "Not if you don't testify." A chill crawled down Daniel's spine. Varga tapped the glass softly with a fingertip. "Tomorrow, you'll get on that stand, and you'll forget my face." He stood up to leave. And as he walked away, Daniel noticed something that made his stomach drop. The very same guard who had escorted him in gave Varga a small, respectful nod, like they knew each other. In that instant, Daniel realized this case was far, far bigger than just a fake coworker. The entire system might be compromised. The courtroom doors opened at 9:02 a.m. Chains around Daniel's wrists rattled softly as the marshal guided him inside. The same room, same judge, same rows of wooden benches. But now Daniel knew something he wished he didn't. The man who framed him could walk into a federal detention area, and guards would greet him. That wasn't fear anymore. That was power. Maria Alvarez leaned toward him. "You look pale," Daniel whispered. "He came to see me last night." She froze. "Who?" "Varga." Maria's eyes widened. "Impossible." He talked to a guard like they were co-workers. Maria sat back slowly. The confidence she always carried slipped for the first time. "Daniel, if that's true, we are not dealing with just a trafficking case anymore." The judge entered. Everyone stood, but Daniel barely heard the formal words. His mind stayed on one thought. If Varga could reach him inside federal custody, what else could he reach? Prosecutor Ethan Cole approached with a folder. "Mr. Mercer, we're offering cooperation again," he said calmly. "Testify against Anthony Varga and the government will file a motion reducing your sentencing level." Daniel stared at him. "You already know I didn't do this." Cole nodded once. "I know you didn't plan it, but legally, you participated." "That's not justice." Cole's voice stayed neutral. "It's federal law." Maria stepped in. "My client reports that Varga accessed a secure holding area last night." Cole's face didn't change, but his eyes did. "Who authorized the visit?" he asked the marshal. The marshal checked papers, frowned, then checked again. No record. The silence stretched. Cole closed his folder slowly. "Your Honor," he said, "the government requests a recess." In a small conference room, tension replaced courtroom order. Cole locked the door. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. Daniel described everything. The smile, the warning, the guard nodding. When he finished, Cole didn't speak for several seconds. Then he said quietly, "We may have a leak." Maria crossed her arms. "You think?" Cole ignored the tone. "Varga's network has avoided prosecution for years. If he can access detainees, someone inside is helping him." Daniel leaned forward. "Then drop the charges." "I'm not part of this." Cole shook his head. "You're the only person who saw him working inside the warehouse. Without you, we have suspicion. With you, we have proof. So I'm bait." Cole met his eyes directly. "Yes." The plan formed quickly. Daniel would testify before the grand jury, but not publicly yet. Investigators would monitor communications inside the detention center. They needed whoever helped Varga to act again. Maria hated it. "You're putting an innocent man in danger." Cole replied, "He's already in danger." Daniel spoke quietly. "What happens if I refuse?" Cole didn't sugarcoat it. "The sentencing guidelines remain. 25 years minimum." Daniel looked at his hands. His life had turned into a calculation. Years versus risk. Silence versus truth. He whispered, "I'll testify." "Have you ever felt trapped, like the walls were closing in, and no one would believe you?" That's exactly where Daniel found himself. Waking up in a cold, sterile room, he had no memory of how he got there. The place was called the Grantham Institute, a high-tech facility that felt more like a prison than a hospital. Every day was a blur of medication and therapy sessions with a doctor named Varga, whose smile never quite reached his eyes. Varga kept telling Daniel he was there for his own good, to recover from a breakdown. He'd show him photos of a car crash, insisting Daniel was the sole survivor and that the trauma had fractured his mind. But Daniel's gut screamed that something was wrong. The details were fuzzy, the story didn't add up. Varga's questions were always a little too specific, a little too pointed, probing for information that Daniel didn't think he had. Then, one day, something changed. A new cleaner, a quiet woman, slipped him a piece of gum during her rounds. It felt like a small act of kindness, nothing more. But later, alone in his room, Daniel discovered a tiny, tightly folded note inside the wrapper. The message was just 3 words. "They're listening. Don't talk." Suddenly, his paranoia felt justified. He wasn't crazy. Someone else knew what was happening. That same week, a woman claiming to be his cousin came to visit. He'd never seen her before. She introduced herself as Agent Miller. Speaking in hushed tones, she confirmed his suspicions. The Grantham Institute wasn't a hospital. It was an unofficial holding site. And Varga wasn't a doctor. He was an interrogator, trying to extract classified information that they believed Daniel's deceased father, a government scientist, had passed on to him. It was a targeted attack to get to him. His father had hidden crucial data, and Varga thought Daniel was the key. Miller's plan was simple but dangerous. Daniel had to play along. He had to remember something, anything, to give her team time to build a case, and raid the facility. With newfound purpose, Daniel went to his next session with Varga. He fed him a carefully constructed story, a mix of half-truths and fabrications about a locker key and a train station. Varga bought it, his eyes gleaming with triumph. The moment Varga left to follow the false lead, Miller's team stormed the institute. The operation was swift and silent, but freedom came at a cost. During the raid, a friendly guard who had often shared stories about his own dog was found dead. It was a stark reminder of the danger they were all in. Varga was captured, but the people he worked for were still out there, lurking in the shadows. A week later, as Daniel tried to piece his life back together, a package arrived. Inside was a simple dog collar, identical to the one his beloved golden retriever, Buster, wore. Attached was a note. "We know where you are. We're always listening." The threat was clear. His ordeal was far from over. This was only the beginning. The sentence that wasn't meant for him. The courthouse looked normal from the outside. Cars passed. People talked. A coffee cart steamed near the steps. But inside, security doubled. Metal detectors. Extra marshals. Plainclothes agents standing in corners pretending to read phones. Daniel noticed everything. Because now he understood. This trial was not just about guilt. It was about who controlled the truth. Maria walked beside him. "Once you sit down, don't look at anyone except the jury." Daniel nodded. But when the courtroom doors opened, he saw Varga. Same calm posture. Same small smile. Hands folded like a businessman attending a meeting instead of a criminal trial. And for the first time, Daniel saw fear in the prosecutor's face too. The judge spoke firmly. "This court will maintain order. We will proceed." The jury watched carefully as Daniel took the stand. He raised his right hand again. "Do you swear to tell the truth?" "I do." His voice was steady now. Not brave, just tired. Maria began gently. "Daniel, explain to the jury why you were at the warehouse." "I was hired as temporary security," he said. "I thought it was shipping paperwork." "Did you know illegal activity was happening?" "No." She walked slowly across the floor. "Tell them about the man you knew as Victor." Daniel pointed. Anthony Varga didn't react. "He gave instructions," Daniel said. "Told me what doors to open, what trucks were expected. I believed he worked for federal inspection." "Why?" "He had ID. He knew procedures. And he spoke like someone used to being obeyed." Maria nodded. "Did you ever receive money from the operation?" "No." "Did you plan anything criminal?" "No." She stepped back. No further questions. The prosecutor stood. "Mr. Mercer, when police arrived, you ran." Daniel swallowed. "Yes." "Why would an innocent man run?" "Because I thought I'd be blamed." The prosecutor paused. "And you were correct." Quiet laughter moved through the courtroom, quickly silenced by the judge. "Did the defendant ever threaten you directly?" Daniel hesitated. He remembered the photo of his dog. But Maria's instruction echoed. "Answer only what is asked." "No," Daniel said. The prosecutor looked satisfied. No further questions. Then came the defense attorney, a tall man with slow movements and careful words. He approached like a teacher explaining a lesson. "Mr. Mercer," he said softly, "you expect the jury to believe a powerful criminal framed you randomly?" Daniel said nothing. "Out of hundreds of workers, trucks, and cameras, he chose you. A stranger?" "Yes." The attorney smiled slightly. "Why?" Daniel breathed slowly. "Because he listens. Because I was the only person who followed instructions without questioning authority," Daniel said. He needed someone predictable. The attorney's smile faded a little. "Or perhaps," he said, "you were a willing helper who changed his story once consequences appeared." "No." "You were facing 25 years, correct?" "Yes." "And now, with cooperation, far less." "Yes." "So your freedom depends on accusing my client." Daniel looked directly at the jury. "My freedom depends on telling the truth." The room stayed silent. The attorney paused longer this time. No further questions. But before Daniel could leave the stand, the prosecutor stood again. "Your Honor, the government requests permission to present new evidence obtained last night." The courtroom stirred. The judge frowned. "Explain." "A recorded phone call from inside federal detention." The defense immediately objected, but the judge allowed it. The audio played through the speakers. A guard's voice. "He's testifying tomorrow." Then Varga's calm voice answered. "Then the witness problem solves itself." The courtroom went perfectly still. Even the air felt frozen. Maria looked at Daniel. For the first time, relief. The prosecutor turned to the jury, his voice cutting through the silent courtroom. "This recording," he said, holding it up, "was made just hours before a witness intimidation attempt involving the defendant's residence and property." The defense team sat perfectly still. All eyes were on Varga, but the calm, charming businessman mask he always wore, it was gone. Varga wasn't smiling anymore. The jury was out for only 4 hours, but for Daniel, it felt like an eternity. He sat in a sterile waiting room, his eyes fixed on a clock whose hands refused to move. Each tick was a hammer blow against his chest, a year passing in a second. Maria, his lawyer, broke the heavy silence. "No matter what happens, Daniel, you told the truth." He could only manage a whisper in reply. "The truth almost cost me everything." She nodded, her expression grim. "Sometimes it still does." Just then, the door creaked open. A bailiff stood in the doorway. "They have a verdict." Everyone in the courtroom rose as the jury filed back in, their faces unreadable. The foreperson clutched a single sheet of paper, the words on it holding the power to define lives. "On the charge of conspiracy and trafficking against the defendant, Varga," she began, her voice steady, "we find the defendant guilty." A ripple of hushed whispers went through the gallery, but Varga himself showed no reaction. He stood like a statue, but it was the next verdict that held Daniel's entire world in the balance. On the charge against Daniel Mercer, Daniel forgot how to breathe. The world narrowed to that single voice. Not guilty. The entire room seemed to exhale at once, a collective sigh of released tension. Daniel's knees buckled and he sank into his chair, the weight of 25 potential years vanishing in an instant. Freedom. It was a word he hadn't dared to even think. Months later, the courtroom was packed again for Varga's sentencing. The judge looked directly at him, his voice clear and firm. "You used the very structure of our federal sentencing guidelines, a system meant for justice, to manipulate innocent individuals into criminal exposure. You weaponized the fear of punishment to silence the truth." The judge paused, letting the weight of his words fill the room. "Therefore, this court sentences you to life imprisonment, without the possibility of parole." The sharp crack of the gavel echoed like a gunshot. And for the very first time, Varga looked uncertain. He didn't look afraid, not exactly. He just looked small. Stepping outside the courthouse, the bright sunlight felt strange, almost foreign on Daniel's skin. He stood on the top step, holding the leash of his dog, Milo, who was wagging his tail, blissfully unaware of the nightmare that had just ended. Maria came to stand beside him. "You're free, Daniel. Truly free." He looked up at the vast blue sky. "I always thought justice was about punishment," he said, his voice quiet. Maria shook her head gently. "Sometimes, justice is simply about stopping the wrong sentence from ever being carried out." He nodded slowly, the truth of her words sinking in. The system, the very laws designed to protect people, had almost worked exactly as Varga intended. And that was the most terrifying part. A law created to measure guilt had nearly been used to destroy an innocent man. Daniel walked down the steps and into the open air. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a victim. He was just a man who had learned a chilling lesson. That the scariest weapon in the world isn't always a person with a gun. Sometimes, it's just a rule written on a piece of paper. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching. Kindly like, comment, and subscribe for more crime documentary.